Welcome, friends, to episode number 34 of Ice Cave Radio. Flake alongside Charmer. Doa was going to be here. Doa was ready to rock and roll. Unfortunately, he has succumbed to multiple unfortunate events that have led to him having to last minute, and when we say last minute, it was literally like 10 minutes ago, mentioned to us that he cannot make it, and it breaks his heart that he can't be here, and he'll be in Minneapolis, but he will be on plenty of future episodes, and no, he's not sick of us.
Yeah, I was just about to say, he's probably going to hate that we're calling him out like this, but I have pulled it up so I can just read it real quick. It says, "I can't believe I ever associated with you nerds. Get wrecked. You'll never hear from me again."
Get wrecked. The most professional, the most professional of esports casters I have ever met, saying things like "get wrecked, you nerds." I don't think that's part of it.
No, not at all.
But still, we do miss Doa. Doa will be in Minneapolis this coming weekend. This episode actually releasing on a Friday because we don't want to take anything away from Saturday's festivities. So a little early for you. I'm Flake. This is Ice Cave Radio, a podcast about Star Wars Unlimited and all kinds of other Star Wars card gaming. And that is Charmer.
It is, in fact, me. And you know what else it is?
What is it?
The cave poll of the week.
That was a good transition. I like that one. No dilly-dallying for you.
No, we got to get right in because I love this cave poll.
This cave poll is very apropos to everything going on in the world. And I think that from the moment I hit the send button on Sunday for this one to now, people's impression of one of the options has dramatically changed. And I'm talking about like within the past 24 hours. So here is the cave poll of the week. Again, available at Ice Cave Radio on Twitter every Sunday. You can give us your opinion. Who wins a battle of the bands? Your options are the modal nodes. The modal nodes, of course, being the band at the Cantina, led by Figrindan. Frankly, if you're into Jats, ladies and gentlemen, the modal nodes are one of the best. You have the Max Rebo band, most famous for rocking it out on the Jabba's sail barge. I mean, we've seen Max Rebo just getting those cruise gigs. We have Cy Snoodles. Cy Snoodles was the one at Jabba's palace, rocking it out, until I think they redid it in the special editions where he have like the dude shows up and you see his little uvula jiggling about when he's like Goonie Tay, which I think means like I don't know what that's a good question for the Wampas out there. What does Goonie Tay mean to you when he's like no Goonie Tay, and then they all just bust it out? It's like James Brown saying get down.
Yeah, maybe.
It's got to be it. And finally, our fourth option, Taylor Swift, because frankly, I think she has transcended time and space by now, so she is definitely an option here. And when I said that one of these options, Charmer, has kind of shifted in terms of people's perception, but when I printed it, when I published this poll, she's out there, everybody loves her, and suddenly over the past maybe 12 hours, today being February 7th, at around 5:45 p.m. Eastern, people found out that she took like a 17-minute or 13-minute jet ride from one end of the town to the other.
People forgot that she's a billionaire, and so she does billionaire things. Yeah. And then the people that were very pro Taylor then had to wrestle internally with the I'm supposed to be like very eat the rich as well, and now she's both, right? It'd be like being pro good political discourse, but then also realizing that Queen Amidala is still royalty, right? Like you want to listen to her as the voice of reason, but also she's a filthy politician at the same time. You have that internal struggle, and I think that's what's happening a bit with the Swifties.
I think that's, well, you know, it's like any other sort of cult of personality. It doesn't matter what they do because morality adjusts to their behavior and your perception of it in the same regard, where it's like, I don't know if this is good or bad. I'm going to see if this person does it. If they do it, it's automatically good. This exists in so many other capacities of so many other things. But I want to know, who did you vote for Charmer?
I voted for the Max Rebo band. And the reason I did, this is going to be a bit of a meandering story, but you may or may not know that there is apparently I don't know if it's a remake or if you would consider it a reboot or whatever. But there is a new version of Roadhouse coming out starring Jake Gyllenhaal.
I have heard so. Yes, I've seen I've seen stills.
And I've seen the trailer, and I'm, speaking of like mixed feelings, I am very much against a lot of like remakes and reboots and things, especially when I think that there's nothing wrong with the original. Like Roadhouse is fine. I don't know who is saying like, man, I really wish that they would just do another Roadhouse movie, because anyone who likes Roadhouse loves Roadhouse to begin with. But I'm having the internal struggle because I watched the trailer, and like, if I'm being objective, like, I want to hate it, but the trailer looks fun. And if it was literally named anything other than Roadhouse, like, I would have been like, oh yeah, that looks fun. I'll like watch that with the wife. You know what I mean? So it's like, I'm trying to be self-reflective. But anyway, I picked Max Rebo because they are, to me, the band from Roadhouse. You know, when they're like behind the cage and they like throw the bottle at them, and they're just like trying to survive and play their music in the club. That's Max Rebo on the sail barge, right? He's there with like the hive of scum and villainy. It's Jabba, it's bounty hunters, it's whoever. And he's like, man, I'm just trying to play some tunes. I'm trying to not end up in that Rancor pit. Throw me a bone here. So, that I don't know why, but that's why I was like, you know what? We're going to give it to the Star Wars universe version of the Roadhouse band.
He's like the quartet that began playing as the Titanic was sinking,
Yeah.
It's like, hey, this is what we do. Let's just roll with it. In fact, there is this video that every now and then pops up on my Reddit feed of, it's an old video. I think it's got to be 20 years old. It looks like it was recorded that way, of some, I believe it is a Colombian country singer. This sounds weird, but basically the video is, he's on stage at this big banquet. He's handed a note. He reads the note. He goes like super like ghost white, and then blasts out like a rendition of his most favorite song. And then you find out the backstory to it, which is basically he was handed a note from like a Colombian drug cartel that says, we are going to kill you after this show. And rather than like freak out or whatever, he's like, screw it, we're going down, swinging, and he sings his song, and then he literally gets executed afterwards. And that's not obviously in the video. That would be grotesque. But the video itself is just seeing him look at the note, realize this is my last day on Earth, and just goes out in a blaze of glory, singing his most famous song. And yeah, to me, Max Rebo, I believe there was a lot of rekindled Max Rebo interest when Book of Boba Fett came out, because Max Rebo was like in some of the scenes, and people were like, he survived. The dude is invincible, So like, it was crazy. People were like, how the hell did he live? So I also voted for Max Rebo because there's very much this backstory to him where he is this kind of invincible person who's like, goes through hellfire and brimstone, witnesses the demise of the crime lord of Tatooine at the hands of, the rebellion's greatest heroes, and says, you know what? We're going to write another album about this. Kind of like Taylor Swift and her relationships. I just realized.
Yeah.
Through demise and tragedy and smoldering ruin of people's lives, she comes out with platinum records, and so does Max Rebo. Good old Max Rebo. Well, shall we go through the...
Yeah.
All right, so here are the results, my friends. Basically, Max Rebo with the win at 45%. Second place, Figrin Dan in the modal nodes at 23.9%. Jats Legends. Taylor Swift, 22.9%. And Cy Snoodles way in the back at 8.3%. I think this is fair. I think that Taylor Swift probably wouldn't be last, even though, you know, I'm sure that long and far away, the broadcast of her wonderful, wonderful voice has made it all the way to Tatooine.
Yeah, I think folks got it right, obviously, because they picked the same thing as me. But I was honestly surprised Taylor Swift didn't get more votes. I'm going to be honest. I expected her to potentially get second place.
Most votes for any of our poll, by the way. This is the most voted upon poll that we've ever had.
Of course.
I like how you when we were putting the things out there, you're like, jam Taylor Swift in there just for the engagement. Okay. It worked.
Yeah. Well,
I'm not going to lie.
Got to be timely and relevant.
You're not wrong. All right. So there it is, ladies and gentlemen.
So our next poll, well, we don't know what it is, obviously, yet, but I feel like if we're trying to be timely and relevant, I just read the news that Disney is investing in Epic Games, something like $1.5 billion for a stake in Epic Games. So there's going to be a partnership between like them and, you know, there's already Star Wars and
what do they do?
Marvel stuff. Well, so the big thing is Fortnite.
Oh, right. They do
Rocket
Fortnite.
League, and, you know, they've got their launcher and they actually have their own like development companies and things like that. But, you know, the big one is Fortnite. And I know that Disney already had, like I said, the Star Wars characters that are in Fortnite. Sometimes I rock Darth Maul when I'm playing with the kids. But yeah, I'm looking forward to more now.
Well, wasn't there part of like Star Wars canon where they announced like Emperor Palpatine within Fortnite? Like it was a Fortnite related event?
Yeah, they do events like that all the time. So like when there was a season where like Darth Vader was on the battle pass, and then they were doing this thing where you could get lightsabers in the game like as a weapon, and so then you could use it to like do force dashes and then like, you know, slice people with a lightsaber. It was actually a lot of fun. Like I said, I play it with the kids. Stark is still dying to play with you. He's always asking, when is Uncle Flake going to download Fortnite? And I say, Uncle Flake doesn't even know who you are, kid.
You're such an ass. Okay. For the record, completely different thing here. Anyways, let's close this up. That is the Ice Cave poll of the week, ladies and gentlemen. The Cave poll of the week available every Sunday at Ice Cave Radio on Twitter. A new question every week for us to discuss. Go vote. Go follow us. Do all that stuff.
Go vote.
I did my own little minor polling, as it would be, when I was in Hartford for the calling, the Flesh and Blood calling. I asked people, I said, have you ever heard of the saying the cat's ass? Many said, well, you mean the cat's pajamas? Do you mean the cat's meow? And I said, I believe these are all G-rated transformations of the pinnacle, which is the cat's ass. And then that became, well, yeah, I've heard of that. Okay, I get it. And then our good friend Az from Go Again Gaming said, well, I've heard of the dog's arse, or the cat's arse. I said, okay, that makes sense. But he's like, I've also heard of the dog's bollocks.
I was just about to say that, as the British, that's the one I know.
And then it basically devolved into things like the chimp's chode or the turtle's taint and all kinds of other nonsense. And then eventually the pairings went up and I had to go sit down and play. But there was a whole myriad of things. And I think that maybe the cat's ass is being a great saying. We should sort of create something like the Minox mouth, or I don't know, like, you know, like the Dewbacks. No, I don't know.
The Sarlacc sack.
Yeah, the Sarlacc sack. Like we need to use some Star Wars related things to sort of push forward. But anyways, I just wanted to clarify.
The Bantha butthole.
You could have just said the Bantha's but you had to qualify.
The Dewbacks Dingleberry.
No, we're done. All right, let's go to the headlines, friends, as I rescue for you all from this. Essentially, not many headlines to get to, but most importantly being that tomorrow, if you're listening to this on launch day, on the Saturday, there is a stream for FFG, which will feature a lot of the content creators and people who have been graciously invited by FFG to play the game early, to open packs, to draft, to play sealed, to do all kinds of cool stuff. We will be there, and that, I think, is going to be the biggest chunk of change news, as far as I know, unless there's something else that you know.
The other bit of news that I have is that I found a pre-release that I can go to.
Hey, that's big.
Ask your local game stores. That is the big takeaway there. I have at least one that I know of is running one for sure, and I'm asking to see if there are others that same weekend, because the one I'm going to will be on that Friday, the 1st, and if I can find one on Saturday or Sunday, I might try to go more than once. Big deal.
We love that. I think that's awesome. I know that I'm going to be going to the one at Harry Tarantula in Toronto. Don't know what day specifically. I think I want to do one, as many as I possibly can. I will. The problem is legitimately, I have asked a few within my radius of where I can go, and some are not doing it. However, I have basically sort of beaten the drum, and I implore you all to do the same. I do have another piece of news for you, though, Charmer.
I'm all ears.
Our T-shirts are in. Ooh.
Oh, baby. That's so pretty.
We get some Ice Cave Radio T-shirts. They are in. Only 3 have been made. 1 for each, myself, you, and Doa. More will be coming. And along with a whole bunch of other stuff. And now's a good time, maybe, Charmer, to also drop a little tidbit of news, is that I made a Discord server today. So we're going to have the link to it in this video and everywhere else, and we invite everybody to start populating the cave, because that's where we're going to be.
Pardon our dust. It will likely be under construction for a bit, because obviously we're standing this up and then we're jetting off to the event. But
yes. Hey, we want to invite people to come talk about the game, talk about your passions, your life, your love, and everything in between, and just go from there. And this never crossed my mind until multiple people said, "Is there a Discord server? Is there a Patreon? How can we kind of coalesce together?" So if you choose to, that's where we'll be, and we invite you to come and hang out as well. All right, Charmer, shall we talk about some spoilers? Not many, and I think there's like 20 cards left as of when we are recording this again.
Yeah.
February 7th at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You want to kick us off, or should I do the first one so you can do the second one?
No, I want to do this first one, actually.
Hit it.
I really do. I will say that what we are lacking in quantity, we make up for in quality for the spoilers this week.
We're talking about the cards, not the hosts.
Yeah. Not the hosts, not the content, but all of the spoiled cards are bangers, and there are 3 rares and 1 uncommon. So starting with one of the rares, we have the Emperor's Legion. This is a 2-cost event. It is command and villainy, naturally, because it's the Emperor's Legion. Has the tags Imperial and Supply, but it says return each unit in your discard pile that was defeated this phase to your hand. So for the low cost of 2, at the end of a round, right, if you've had a bunch of combat things go off and you've saved your resources, you can just put all the units that were defeated right back into your hand. That is very big for like token go wide strategies, obviously, because if you're losing a bunch of little guys, that's really important. But also this could even be pretty clutch for getting some key pieces back, because it's only 2. Like, that is a very manageable cost.
It's a very difficult thing to digest if you're on the opponent's side and you just went through the ringer to get rid of your opponent's stuff, and all of a sudden they're like, I'll just take them back. We'll do this again next time, kind of thing. It's any kind of recursive effects are really cool. This to me feels very Golgari, and it is green and black, so it's like the right color scheme as well. It's got Golgari, which for those who don't know, in Magic, Golgari is basically green and black together, which has a lot of destruction and recursion effects to it. It's like sacrifice creatures, bring them back from the graveyard. It wants stuff in the graveyard. It wants to bring it back. It wants to do this vicious cycle. Basically, things are expendable. When you're playing Golgari, your creatures are expendable because you're probably getting them back. Either way, Emperor's Legion's a pretty cool card. I feel this is a rare. I think this is a good rare. I think that it's costed correctly. Most cards in Magic that steal things out of the graveyard and put them back into your hand are usually between 1 and 2 cost, or they're costed higher with better effects, like put it directly to the battlefield. I'm waiting for that card, Charmer. I'm waiting for the bring it back and put it directly back onto the battlefield.
Yeah, because this is the Emperor's Legion, and when we get the one that puts it directly into play, that'll be the Emperor's Comeback.
Somehow the Emperor has returned.
Exactly. I will also just say real quick, I'm a sucker for big battles, and you and I have said big space battles are some of our favorite art in the game. This piece is really cool for a ground battle, though. The ATST and the troopers, and I love what they did with the lighting. It kind of sells you on this was like a night battle, but it's literally being lit up by all of the blaster fire. I will say the stormtrooper who's at the forefront has a little bit of a weird pose to me.
Dude, I was saying the same. He looks like Chad Kroger from Nickelback holding a guitar.
He does. I was about to say he looks like he's playing a guitar or an instrument. But other than that, like everything else about this, I really, really like. This is one of my favorite ground battle art pieces that I've seen so far.
Dude, you're correct. Remember I was talking about the dude that was looking through the scope of the gun and it looked like his head was growing out of his shoulder? Yes. In this case, I kind of get it. He's kind of got like a little bit of a,
It looks like he's holding something heavy. Like if this started as, because who knows how they commission these things, right? I could see a scenario where this started maybe not as a stormtrooper, but as a clone trooper with like one of the big cannons.
Yeah.
And so he's got that slouch. And then they're like, actually, we're going to turn this into stormtroopers, and they just give him, the blaster here, and then it just the slouch looks a little weird. But other than that, I love the piece.
Well, he's kind of hip firing it, which for a standard E-Web blaster, I don't know if it's an E-Web that they use, but ultimately the standard issue Stormtrooper blaster rifle, like mostly you kind of see them kind of shoulder mounting it to a degree and firing it. This guy looks like he's just Ramboing it, and that's fine. Like, for example, look not to the dude behind him, but the third one holding it more upright. That looks more natural. Right. They all seem to be rock stars here. If you've ever have you seen Tropic Thunder?
Oh, of course I have.
All right. Remember that scene where I was going to say Frank Costanza's son, Ben Stiller. When Ben Stiller, who still has no idea, Ben Stiller still has no idea that he's in an actual war zone. And they're like, you got to get over there. You got to and then he's like, fine. And he goes and he does these rolls and he's making it all like, he's like,
dramatic,
yeah. And meanwhile, it's a real, that is kind of, I think that they're all, this to me looks like a poster for Tropic Thunder Star Wars edition.
Could be that. The other way I was looking at it too is everyone else is like, in the heat of the battle, and he looks like some private that the officer that's on the field is like, hey, you need to get in there, and he's like, fine. So he's like half into it, he's like, oh, I guess I'll lift my E11 carbine.
Yes.
I'll throw a couple of shots, but I ain't putting in work today. This I don't know. It just feels lazy in some respects as well. Like, I guess I will.
One of the movies I watched on my way to New Zealand was The World's Greatest Beer Run, which was a very good movie. I really like Zac Efron. He plays a dude named Chicky who feels bad because he didn't get drafted. Not feels bad, but his friends got drafted, and he keeps getting told that you're not contributing, you're not doing anything. So he says he's going to go bring his buddy's beer. It's based on a true story, and what's crazy about it is at the end of the story they show you the real footage and they show you the real pictures he goes to Vietnam and brings a duffel bag of beer, and the whole thing is that he doesn't comprehend how absolutely devastating and tragic the entire situation is, how the people who are there are in no way, shape, or form having any semblance of solace while he's there. And that's kind of what I feel like it's over here. Like, he's like, we have to go over there. He's like, all right, let's walk. And they're like, no, it's like you're under constant sniper fire. Yeah. And so, like, that's kind of how I feel like. But that's the Emperor's Legion. The artwork is great, I think. It's really cool. Like you said, that one Chad Kroger Nickelback guy in the front aside. But
it's the Bard.
Yeah, it's fun.
The Bard of this D&D group.
All right, let's move on to what is, in my opinion, probably the Mac Daddy hero that you can use, the leader. It is Emperor Palpatine, Galactic Ruler. And he is a command in villainy. Action for one resource, you defeat a friendly unit, so you sack a friendly unit. Golgari, hello, Golgari. Deal 1 damage to a unit and draw a card. And the epic action is if you control 8 or more, you can flip him to Emperor Palpatine. He is a Force Imperial Sith official. A 4 attack, 10 body. Is this the first double-digit body we've seen?
I believe so, except for things that are like starships but like as far as a single character, This is the first time we've seen double-digit.
Text reads, when deployed, take control of a damaged non-leader unit.
Yep.
On attack, you may defeat another friendly unit. If you do, deal 1 damage to a unit and draw a card. This dude is, I think, I had mentioned the whole time, Thrawn. And I'm still high on Thrawn. Don't get me wrong. But when we were talking about this game early on and we got our first glimpse of a big walker and a big Star Destroyer, I said command and villainy is going to be your ramp big boy control, and I was waiting for the leader to make it happen. And this is the dude. This is the deck I am starting with. This is absolutely the deck I am starting with. It is Emperor Palpatine. It's a bunch of DJ Death Stars and a bunch of low-cost on-deploy value that I'm going to feed to Sheev, okay? And he is going to do some naughty stuff. I am so for this hero. This is a 5-on-5 for me.
I love the design because it's obviously about sacrificing pawns to gain power, right? Flavor-wise, this is such a home run. And then also the deal a damage to a unit as well. It's like throwing little mini Force Lightnings out. I know we have the unit that represents him like doing the full Force Lightning thing, but even here, just kind of having that little jab, little bit here, I love it. I also love that you mentioned DJ Death Star because when I first saw this, I thought even if he doesn't find a true home in set 1, he will be a rock star at some point because he is such a good when defeated enabler. I could see scenarios where in later sets we have decks that revolve around units that trigger when defeated effects, for example. And some of them might be hard to trigger, right? They might have a good effect, but like a high health, low attack so that you have to work to do it. But then you just have a leader that can let you trigger those when defeated effects essentially on command. That's really, really important if you want to build an archetype around that kind of ability. I love everything about this leader.
Like, I agree. Whew.
The question, obviously, is, can you survive to pull him off? I think even though we were talking about ramp, it's going to be difficult to go double command with him. I think that you're also really going to need to lean into probably vigilance because that seems to be the best source of villainy-based units where you have health gain, right? So again, Del Mico, the guy we were talking about, has restore. You've got your removal events in vigilance as well to help you kind of get to that late game. We've also seen some great control units. So if you have Palpatine, so the other big thing, you talk about ramp, right, in the swing turns, you have to remember his epic action doesn't actually cost the resources. So if you can speed run to 8 and then you're trying to stabilize, you can drop a giant 8-drop walker or starship or whatever, and then also deploy Palpatine. And then if they have a damaged unit, then you take that from them as well.
Yeah.
Like, it is a big swing in stabilization. You just got to get there.
So you know, like every major kind of deck that has this, and I'm going to let people know or sort of take this back to something like, let's say, Prism or Druid. Prism in Flesh and Blood was a hero that basically you looked like you were losing until you were just definitely winning. It was all right, I will take my licks, set myself up, and go down to about half health or less, but then it's the me show, and there's nothing you can do because I will overwhelm you, but I have to survive to then. And in this case, like, for example, the same thing with Druid in Hearthstone. When you're ramping up, when you're doing that ramp game, you're probably giving up board status, but late game, you're going to be dropping massive pieces that your opponents are going to be well behind on. That is the trade-off. I played Domain Ramp in Standard Magic a couple of months ago, maybe 4 or 5 months ago, and it was the same thing. It's like, all right, you're going to set up the board, I'm going to take some damage, but by turn 5, I'm going to have 9 lands down, and then it's done. That's kind of what this feels like, and there's tools to do it, and what I'm really frightened about is what this deck is going to look like on set 2, on set 3, on set 4. So we'll see what that looks like, but for now, this is if you're going to ask me, what is the first deck I'm building? It is Sheev, baby. Believe in Sheev. That's what we're doing. We Sheev to believe. Hashtag believe in Sheev. Sheev to believe. All right. Shall you go to the next one?
Yeah, I was going to say, some strong beliefs. None other than Saw Gerrera, Extremist. I love this card so much.
Oh, God.
I cannot begin to tell you how insane this card feels. All right, so Saw Gerrera is a 4-cost ground unit, double aggression. But there's a reason that he's a 4-cost double aggression, because all of the rest of his package is kind of nutty in terms of power. Has a 5 power, 4 body, has the Rebel tag. As an additional cost for each opponent to play an event, they must deal 2 damage to their base. So again, to put that into perspective, it's only opponents, and that is for every event they want to play, they also have to deal 2 damage to their base while he's on the board. And he's kind of pretty well upstatted as a 5/4 for 4 in an aggressive deck. This is just absolutely monstrous.
It is monstrous, especially if your opponent doesn't have a clean way to deal with it. Not to mention, if your opponent is going to use a event to get rid of it, that's fair. That's perfectly fair, but they're going to get taxed on it. It's when, there are always decks out there that do most of the heavy lifting through events. I'm looking right now at Waylay is probably going to, Cunning is probably going to be a lot of that. This is going to be nasty. Is it decks in Magic would just hate this? And the problem is at the same time is like, okay, yeah, maybe I'll just remove it with 1 card, but that's a card you're going to get taxed on to get rid of this that you might not want to. The 4 body is, there's a lot of things. I think Takedown kills it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And
so there is a lot of things that will remove it at 4, but the important piece here is that, 1, as you said, you already get taxed. So he doesn't have a comes into play ability, but he almost guarantees, unless, you're leading off your turn with him blind and he gets hit with an ambush or something, he almost guarantees that he's going to still get you value in the form of that 2 damage. So you develop your board, you're likely threatening 2 damage or some sort of unit trade. But the other thing that he does is, in the late stages of the game, if you already have other units on the board that are problematic for your opponent, and then you drop this, now if they've got that takedown or, whatever that they were going to use, they have to say, okay, well, do I want to take out the Saw, or do I want to take out the first thing I was already planning on getting rid of and then also take damage later for the Saw? There is just like that tension that he creates, and that's so important for aggressive decks. He does a lot of things for you. He's so, and the Rebel tag is not irrelevant. There's a lot of the aggression based like weenies that interact with rebels. As I've been kind of moseying over, decks that I want to try building, and I've been doing quite a bit of theory crafting. One of the lists I've been working on is a double aggression Sabine list, and there's a lot of rebel interaction in double aggression, and he just fits right into it.
I'm not gonna be playing aggression, I don't think, for a while. That's just me. I'm more interested in other things, but I absolutely respect the game. You know what I mean? Like, game, respect game. This is one of those situations where I look at Saw Gerrera and yeah, it looks fragile, but it's a situation where if you're playing a very aggressive deck, you're probably using a lot of resources to get rid of stuff, a lot of events to get rid of stuff, and he hits the board and you're like, all right, I gotta get rid of this. Maybe there's a more damaging unit on the board, but I cannot let this go, especially if I'm playing Cunning or I'm playing Vigilance that's going to have a lot of events that I'm going to be playing. I like Saw Gerrera. I think this card's a solid 4 on 5, 4.5. We're going to do a full set review eventually.
Yeah.
But
I would play this card if it said every player had to take 2 damage to play events. The fact that it's only opponents still just blows my mind.
Yeah, because as an aggressive unit, like aggressive thing, you're probably playing minimal events. You're flooding the board, right? Like that's your game plan. All right, let's go to the last spoiler. Again, we went in chronological order of release here. Again, big thank you to SWU. Go check them out. They do such great things. They also have a podcast, and they're wonderful people there. So we want to give some shout-outs because great resource. Let's go take a look here. It is a 6-drop Vigilance Command Space Unit. It's the Ghost. You know the Ghost. Spectre Home Base. And it is a vehicle, a rebel vehicle, a transport, and it has the Spectre tag, a 5/5. 5/5 for 6, meh, not so good. However, it is shielded. It is protected. And it says when played on attack, you may give a shield token to another Spectre unit. Huge. Huge! Shield tokens, I think, are going to be very important. They facilitate trades so well. I think that this is an awesome card. And I think that within the grand scheme of Spectre, there's so many different aspects floating around. I haven't given it much thought, but I know you have. So I want to hear what you think about the Ghost.
I really like the Ghost for your Hera decks, just because the ability to protect your key, Ghost homies, if you will, right? All of the Spectre crew is going to be really important. But if I'm being honest, what I really, really like about this card is where it sits in limited. It's only an uncommon. And when you look at the kind of disparity between the low cost starships are and then the higher cost ones are, there are very few kind of middle of the road units that are in the space zone. And this fits that bill very well. And the fact that it shields its self right out of the get-go is very, very important. So in limited, this is the kind of unit that could help you take control of or just clamp down on the entire space arena and then run away with it. So I think it'll be an auto include in the Hera lists, just because I can't imagine that you're not wanting to run all of the Spectre units, because that's part of the fun. But when I saw this, I was like, wow, I actually think this card is pretty good and limited. It also doesn't hurt that many of the Spectre units are also uncommons. So it's very likely that you can run other Spectre units still in your draft deck or in your sealed deck, right? Like you could be running this and Kanan. And if you could then play this and put the shield on Kanan, that's a pretty big play in limited.
I'm just so hyped for this. I want to make a comparison, and I am a huge Star Trek fan as well. This ship reminds me of the Defiant, the ship from Deep Space Nine that eventually was under the command of Captain Sisko, and eventually under the command of Captain Worf. And if you watch the best ever Star Trek movie of all time, First Contact, there is a scene where Worf is piloting the Defiant, and it gets rescued by the Enterprise against an engagement against the Borg. And the funniest part is Worf, they beam all the survivors onto the bridge, onto the Enterprise, and Dr. Crusher's like, we have a patient who insists on coming to the bridge, and it's Worf. And he's all battered and bruised, and the ship is like adrift. And Riker goes to Worf and says, "Tough little ship you got there." And Worf looks at him and says, "Little?" And like Riker's like, "Oh, okay, sorry." And this is kind of what this ship reminds me of. Is the Ghost reminds me of the Defiant. It doesn't look like much, but under the right pilot, the right crew, the right command, it is a tough little SOB, and that's kind of what I feel like this is going to be.
Every now and then, I remember why I'm friends with you, and I just need you to know that I'm so happy that you recognize First Contact is the best Star Trek movie, because I 100% agree.
Without a doubt. It's an excellent movie, all things considered.
It's an excellent movie, all things considered, but it's easily the most rewatchable. It is, I would almost say it might be the only Star Trek movie, even counting like the new Abrams ones, that like if I was flipping through channels and it was on, it's okay, I'll stop flipping. Like that's how I judge a lot of my movie enjoyments, right? Like if I'm bored and I'm flipping through channels or something just happens to be on, am I willing to change it? And that's one where I'm like, no, I'll leave it, you know?
Within the dating hellscape that is apps and such, whenever you're trying to get to know somebody, one of the questions that I'll ask to spark conversation is, if you're flipping through channels, what movie do you land on that you cannot switch the channel off again? We all have those. And you're right. This is a movie I think I've seen about 7 or 8 times. I recently, I think over the holidays, you know, like the gloomy, depression-filled holidays, I basically watched all the Star Trek movies from Star Trek 1, Star Trek the Motion Picture, all the way through to the final, or the most recent Abrams movie. It's like 11 or 12 movies. I watched all of them. This one still stands as my favorite. First Contact was absolutely my favorite. And
it's Jurassic Park, by the way.
Oh, Jurassic Park is the original that Jurassic Park. The 90s had some of the most, like I tried to do, I'm like, top 10 movies, your top 10 favorite movies of the 90s. And I was like, oh, that's not hard to do. Jurassic Park, True Lies, Men in Black. And then by the time you're done listing movies, you're like, okay, and the 27th movie on my top 10 list is. There are so many banger movies in the 90s. It's unfair.
Jurassic Park is the movie that made me love movies, is the only way I know how to put it, because it was the right movie at the right time in my life. You have to understand, when Jurassic Park came out, I was 9. It was like everything that I wanted in a movie experience as a 9-year-old boy to go see Jurassic Park. It was mind blowing. And then I was hooked, and it has stuck with me for like my entire life. Like I have seen it probably in the hundreds of times. Like that's not even hyperbole. I am a huge Jurassic Park guy. And then side note, like if I had to like have a list, right? So we'll go Jurassic Park, Die Hard is up there.
Yep.
Predator is up there. And then it's hard to, because like it's technically 3 movies, but any of the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Like if that's on, it's,
but those weren't 90s movies.
No. I just meant,
all right. Okay. Yeah. Well,
I'm not going to do my 90s thing. We'll be here all
no, that's kind of like cheating. Yeah, I agree.
I just meant like stuff where I know definitively, like if I come across it, like, all right, we've stopped. We are now in the movie for the rest of the movie.
All right, I'm calling emergency pack on this, and I'm going to end it with this as we move on to the main topic. Jurassic Park was the first movie I watched where I actively believed that what I was seeing was real. Like I knew that it wasn't, but I was convinced. Like that was the first time that I saw a movie where I was like, wow, the movies can make me believe something. Like I saw all kinds of other movies, but in your head I'm like, this is fake. Obviously, this is just make believe. That was the first movie where I watched it and I felt like it was real. And that's what, like you said, it was the first time that a movie made that happen for me. And that's where we're at. All right. So what is the main topic of the conversation today? Well, we did get a bunch of people asking us saying, hey, sell this game to me. Tell me why I should play it. And I receive all kinds of messages from people, both positive for Star Wars Unlimited and negative for Star Wars Unlimited, because we would be silly to not or to ignore the fact that FFG has put out other products before with Star Wars on it that has ultimately disappointed the fan base down the line. So some people are just not on board, but some are still on the fence. And they said, sell it to me because you're clearly gung-ho about it. You, Charmer, Doa are very well versed in card games. So tell me why this is something I should give a crap about. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to go through casual, competitive, and collectability and tell you why Star Wars Unlimited might appeal to you. This isn't us trying to shill the game to you, but what we want to do is talk to you about some elements within those three metrics or those three criteria, and maybe something there grips you, or maybe it's the opposite. Maybe after all we say, you say, you know what, I've decided this isn't for me, and that's perfectly okay. There is nothing wrong with that. So, Charmer, you want to kick us off a little bit? Talk about some of the casual appeal?
I would love to, because I think that this is one of the strengths of the game, if I'm being honest. Obviously, Star Wars is a very accessible intellectual property, so there are lots of themes that are going to carry over. Whether you're a fan of Star Wars or not, there's still, good and evil, good guys and bad guys, if you will. Recognizable characters, but obviously if you're a fan of Star Wars, that goes miles and miles further. There are multiple game modes that we already know are going to be supported. So if you're a casual, for example, and when we say casual, I just mean somebody who's not like invested in the competitive tournament scene. I don't mean like somebody who's not taking the game serious or whatever, but maybe limited play isn't your thing. Maybe you don't like sealed or draft, but you do like multiplayer. We've already been teased the Twin Suns format. We know that there are likely going to be more formats being supported as well. The other nice bits here, if you are somebody who just enjoys playing the game and you don't like those non-games, is that the resource is more forgiving than if you're coming from, again, games like Magic the Gathering, since you don't have to draw lands and any card can be a resource. You're never going to have, those situations where you just don't have resources. Now, depending on how you build your deck, you could draw all your cards that cost like 8 or more and still not be able to do anything. That's just card games, but it's a lot more forgiving. I love the draw 2 cards per turn. I love that so many cards in set 1 also draw a card, because that means you're putting an emphasis on player choice, right? Yes, you can also play the attrition game, but the idea is that you're not going to have non-turns where you just feel like you're not doing anything. But another thing that really, I think, jumps out, and I've been thinking about this a lot, because one of the big pieces of feedback I hear when people try Flesh and Blood and they talk about why they couldn't get into that, they say, it's not that it's a bad game. I just like that feeling of getting stronger over time. So one of the reasons Flesh and Blood appealed to me was because it was a departure from the norm, which is that most card games up until that point had been what are called progressive, and Flesh and Blood is degenerative, meaning you start at your strongest and then you get weaker throughout the game. Games like Magic, games like Lorcana, you start weak and then you get stronger as your resources increase and you play more cards. And this fits that bill. So if you are somebody who, if you've been playing Magic or you enjoy Lorcana and that is something that appeals to you, you like that feeling of, I'm getting stronger as the game goes on. I get to do cooler things. I get to work towards something, build towards something. This game will fit that bill. And we just saw that when we were talking about the revealed cards like the Emperor, right? That's that satisfying moment. You build up to it and then you get your big swing turn. And that is something that I think is going to appeal to people and will kind of capture them a bit more.
I'm all for it. I think that you're right. And part of that also just kind of lends itself to the fact that it's a familiar game. It's something that if you're casual, you don't need to go ahead and go back to square one, because when I started playing Flesh and Blood, I had a vast repertoire of experience within other games, but Flesh and Blood felt different. It significantly felt different in terms of understanding the rules and some of the nuances. And obviously it lent itself, some of the rule sets and objectives of bring your opponent down to 0 is very familiar. But this one lends a lot of rule sets, keywords, interactions from a lot of other card games. So getting into it is not going to feel as imposing. And I think that that is an appealing factor from casuals, where you could pick it up, and even if you don't read the rule set back to front, you can kind of understand. It's like, okay, I kind of getting this. I know what Restore does. It's kind of like Lifelink. I know what Shield does. It's kind of like Divine Shield. It's, you know, and stuff like that. Or you know, all these others. I know how to tap lands. I know how to attack. I know what Summoning Sickness is. I know all that stuff. But beyond that, the number one appealing factor to me for this game is going to be the fact that there are so many themes that you can explore, be it the Spectres and the Rebels, be it the Walkers and the big space units and the this and the that and the underground bounty hunter, scum and villainy kind of stuff. It doesn't matter about fine-tuning and creating the best possible well-tuned symphony of a deck. It is about creating something that is going to feel cool playing it. And the reason that I think that this is cool is because I only played Star Wars CCG in a casual setting. I never played tournaments ever when I was growing up. I didn't have the resources. I didn't have the transportation, the opportunity. It just wasn't there. I only played kitchen table, and we were building decks that we thought were cool, and it is to this day still my all-time favorite card game because I got to blow up the Death Star, because my buddy got to feed dudes to the Rancor or feed them to the Sarlacc pit, because I got to rescue Han Solo from Jabba's palace in Carbonite. That's why I was so into that. I got to build a deck full of Imperial Walkers and Invade Hoth. It's the themes, it's the recognizable characters, and the fact that the game and the cards have flavor to them that are recognizable. You see Han Solo and what he does, it feels Han Solo-esque. That is a lot of the appeal that other card games kind of lack to a degree from a casual perspective. You know, if it wasn't for Commander, I don't think I would play Magic casually in any way, shape, or form. So why do I do it? Well, because I play Commander because I want to do a zombie theme cool stuff, or I want to do Angels because it's cool. The themes and the tribals are part of the appeal, but the appeal is for a casual setting without anything on the line besides having fun and some, you know, bragging rights.
Yeah, I look forward to all of the casual sub formats. You know, you just hit the nail on the head. The tribal thing. You know, I've played so many casual Magic events where it's like you have to bring a tribal deck, and so somebody brings goblins and somebody brings slivers, and you've got angels and whatever. And so I'm looking forward to, you know, the Spectre deck versus the Imperials versus the Jedi or whatever, and all of the stuff that comes with that with this game. I'm also looking forward to other fun things. Like I was thinking, you know, once we get a couple of sets in, I think it'd be really cool to have what I would call an everyman's format. So rarity doesn't matter. You can't play any unique cards. Right?
That's cool.
It's the everyman's format. Stuff like that you can just do. And that's, again, one of the things I love about physical card games is that they're physical cards. So you can just make up whatever rules you want. It's not bound to a digital client that you have to adhere to. Well, this is the only ways to play. That's literally how the best casual formats in Magic were created, was a bunch of people going, hey, let's just do this thing. And suddenly we have the Emperor format, and we have, you know, Commander. For me, it'll always be EDH because that's the way I remember it. And, you know, the Bounty Hunter format in Magic and so on and so forth. I'm looking forward to all of that with this game.
Oh, it's going to be great. So there you go. And from a casual perspective, I think that's part of it. There's going to be lots of game modes. Some of them you're just inventing right now. There's going to be a two-headed giant type of format, like a 2v2 from Twin Suns, I believe it's called, which leads me to believe it's a 2 versus 2. The other part is there's a forgiving resource system, so land screw is not going to be an issue. You draw a lot of you draw 2 cards a turn. There's going to be a lot of opportunity to do things. This feels to me like a clash and bang kind of game, not like I have my sneaky way of doing things. To me, this game is won on the battlefield. It's not won through spells or tapping things in a certain sequence to get a minor edge over time. That's why the casual appeal to me is pretty significant. But again, a lot of that leans towards the fact that if you like the IP, that definitely helps, you know? So let's move to the competitive appeal of this. And one of them that I'm writing in right now, we'll leave till the end. We'll put it there. But I just added in. But let's talk a little bit about competitive edge. You just saw it, right? I completely forgot.
Yeah,
but to me, it's like one of the leading factors. We'll end with that one. Here's where I think, from a competitive standpoint, this game definitely has legs. And it's rules aside. We're going to put the rules. They're important, obviously. But I want to talk a little bit about the deck building latitude in this game. It has a very Magic-esque deck building latitude where you could do a 5-color pile of nonsense and go crazy. You can do that. You can build whatever the hell you want and make it roll. And I think that that's important because that opens up a lot of strategy. It opens up a lot of combo potential, a lot of intricate moving parts and details that games like Gwent, Hearthstone, Flesh and Blood, Pokemon might not have. Well, Pokemon does. But all the others might not have because you are restricted in deck building to the class that you are playing. In Hearthstone, if you're playing Priest, you can't put Mage cards in there. In Flesh and Blood, if you're playing Guardian, you can't put Runeblade cards in there. It's just the way it goes. This does not have that. There are going to be taxes associated to playing the cards you want if they're outside of your aspect triangle. But ultimately, the fact that you're able to do that, there's a lot of people out there who are innovators, who are experimenters, who are going to be in the lab saying, well, if these two cards, which are completely opposed to one another in terms of aspects, they can coalesce and do some really crazy stuff. It's going to be expensive, but is it worth it? And then you go to work. And I really like that there's a lot of latitude in your deck building in this game.
I do not envy the designers and the folks who do balance and whatever, because there is so much latitude with this game, and I'm constantly reminding myself of that. It's so weird. Every time I see a card, I have to say to myself, would I pay $2 more for this? And that's just such a unique feeling. And I don't think that we really know the long-term effects of that, right? And that applies to limited too. I know I bring it up all the time on this podcast, but I love limited, and the limited aspect for this game just gets me so ramped up and excited. And I'm looking forward to obviously drafting a ton of this first set, but I'm also just looking forward to the future sets, right? Because, you know, when I think about other card games, they start with a good core, but they really find their stride most often like year 2, year 3, because that's when they can start incorporating some of that feedback from those early sets. And so that's what I keep thinking about, right? Is like the sets that will be impacted by the feedback that's provided after, you know, we've had a chance to play like set 1 and set 2. I'm just so ready. I don't know how else to put it. And I think that that's the appeal to competitive folks. Like if you're just trying to sell them on gameplay stuff, it's that there is room for a lot of expression, but also a lot of potential to gain advantage. A lot of competitive players love finding that, you know, 2 or 3% advantage. They'll agonize over deck lists. There's a lot of freedom of movement in your deck building here. And I think that is going to be one of the big appeals.
Another major appeal of competitive to me is the fact that there's a lot of decision-making agency in terms of how a particular turn plays out, and it's not necessarily just dependent on you. Much like in Hearthstone, everything happens on your turn. Your opponent can't really interact on their own turn. You make all your decisions, and then you pass the turn. The turns are communal. You would just have your action, then your opponent's, and it alternates until both players pass. There's a eureka moment I see.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's hard for me to also not like think about this. It's been on my mind a lot lately. So if you're not familiar, Legends of Runeterra is a fantastic digital card game. And unfortunately, the competitive support that I used to do casting and coverage for, it's been announced that that's at a minimum going into hibernation, and it might not ever come back. And it's been on my mind a lot as a result of that. But if you're somebody who's listening to this and you are just trying out, you know, the podcast because you've seen me tweet about it or whatever, saying, hey, come try this game. If you're coming from Legends of Runeterra, this is something that will appeal to you. It's a back and forth nature. It plays just like Legends of Runeterra, where it's I take an action, you take an action, I take an action. Now, there is one difference. There are no like fast spells or burst speed stuff. But what you do gain as an advantage, though, is in Runeterra, there's this skill called dry passing. Like, it's the idea of I'm passing and then the pressure's on my opponent, because they could pass and then the turn's just over. But if they take an action, now I get the chance to respond. This game has something similar. So you can take the initiative, which is like passing your entire turn, but you get to go first next time. But there's also the ability to just pass. And I think that the players who very quickly figure out how to dry pass in this game for advantage, it's going to be a skill. And I do think Legends of Runeterra players in particular will be very, very good at it. So if you're listening to this and you're heartbroken about Runeterra and you're thinking about trying a new card game, pick this one up.
That's a very, very good point. The dry pass is going to be a skill set in itself, and that alludes also a little bit to another part, which is bluffing, because I think that there's going to be a part where you have the right response in your hand, but you don't have the right thing on the board that you want to use it for. So maybe you pass with a couple resources open, and then you wait to see what your opponent does. And if they drop something, then bam, you get them. There's going to be some bluffing aspects that are involved in this. And part of it is also just, that dry pass. And, just saying like, I have the initiative, but I'm going to pass to you because I want to be able to respond to your actions.
Right.
And that is going to be massive, especially if you're Cunning. Cunning wants to respond. That's what Cunning wants to do. Cunning may not always want the initiative, but Cunning definitely wants the ability to respond to your stuff. And if Cunning does have the initiative, maybe they just say, all right, brand new turn, everything untaps. I'm going to draw my cards. I'm going to put some resources on the board, and I'm going to pass. And your opponent's going to be like, what the hell is going on? And they'd be silly not to take it, because what if they just say like, all right, well, I'll just take the initiative, and then they're like, cool, your turn is done, here's all my stuff. And then what are they going to do? It is a significant layer that I think when it comes to what makes a good card player, deck building, certainly, sideboard, sure, meta analysis, yeah, but this is a brand new little, extra meat patty in this hamburger that that makes it so extra juicy. And I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. So initiative system, bluffing, the decision making for every single turn, the dry passing, all that stuff is great, Charmer. But at the end of the day, if you're playing competitively, you want a carrot at the end of that stick.
Yeah. Which is, of course, a giant trophy, right? A
trophy, money, glory. And this is part of a major appeal for many card games is going to be the prize. And why do you compete, which is winning big money. So
I'm going to be fully honest here. I'm not saying I don't want to win money, because I definitely do. And there's a lot of people who do. But even if it wasn't actual money, but if I ever had the opportunity to win an oversized check, and maybe it just said Republic credits or something on it, I just want to win an oversized check. I know we've talked about this in the past, but that's what I really want. I need an oversized check that I can win and hang in my office.
It would be cool. I mean, it's like the ultimate sort of flex. Fun story. Ricky Henderson, famous baseball player, when he got his first signing bonus of $1 million, he framed it and didn't cash it because he's Ricky Henderson. One of the most ridiculous sports personalities of all time, Ricky freaking Henderson. So funny. Now, we don't have any information above and beyond what everybody already knows regarding the OP system, the organized play system. We know what's coming from a structural standpoint, but we don't know what's involved from a monetary standpoint, what is being invested. Here is what I will say, because a lot of people have asked me, I'm kind of interested, what's the OP format or the system? And I explained to them, I said, you'll have these levels, kind of akin to Flesh and Blood to a degree, which frankly, I think in my opinion is the benchmark right now of OP systems. So they're like, well, how much money can I win? Like, what's the big deal? And I said, look, I do not know. And I'm not going to venture a guess unless I was confident, but I am venturing a guess of $1 million global for all events across 2025. And the reason I say that is because that is legitimately almost the basement price that you need to get people involved for a global game. Because again, $1 million isn't like, oh, I won the Galactic Championship, I'm a millionaire. No, it's $1 million prize pool spread across all the planetary, the sector qualifiers, and all that stuff. So you'll have 2Ks, you'll have 10Ks, you'll have a couple 100Ks, and maybe you have the Galactic Championship as like a 200K or whatever. I mean, Flesh and Blood last year had $1 million prize thing in 2023, and their world championship was $300,000 prize pool. So my guess is that is what's happening. And from everything I've discussed with FFG and them talking about they have more manpower, they have more invested in this than anything they've ever done, it leads me to believe, Charmer, that is where they are at. Magic the Gathering, $1 million prize pool. Flesh and Blood in 2024, $1.5 million. They've upped it to $1.5 million. My guess is that if they want to compete with these card games for the attention, the time, and the efforts of the game playing community, they have to put $1 million price tag. Otherwise, people will go to other games that have higher price tag numbers, and they are very well aware of that.
I am actually on the other end of the spectrum. I think that if you win the World Championship, you will get a weekend pass to Galaxy's Edge.
No.
And then you'll get promos. And the reason that I believe this, wholeheartedly, mind you, not a bit, I fully believe it. The reason I believe it is because if it's anything more than that, I'm now happy. And if it is that, then I wasn't disappointed. And so that's what I'm going
Oh, I get it. All right. So you're kind of...
Because the reality is, I'm just going to be honest, I am probably going to play this game one way or the other.
For sure.
So
absolutely.
I am trying to not get my hopes up any more than they already are. And this is one way that I have forced myself some expectations and limitations, if you will, of my expectations. So... that is what I'm choosing to believe until I hear otherwise.
All right,
so I can either be right or I can be happily wrong.
Take the conservative approach. I think that's a safe bet. But I will say that if you're a competitor, and again, I think the reason I didn't write it in the list initially is because there's no confirmation of this. But I will say for all of you competitive types that I am willing to bet dollars to donuts that there's going to be a hefty prize pool available to this. And I think that it kicks off with something like 100K Galactic Championship in the summer, like an open tournament to get the buzz going for this game. I think that's fair.
So I will, as one final point here, I will say that one of the hurdles I think this game potentially faces is, what's the right way to put this? Sometimes for other games, the grassroots events can do a lot to help draw interest into a competitive scene, especially in the early stages. And the ability for local game stores or maybe a gaming convention or whatever for somebody to like just run an event, even if it's not sanctioned, right? But for them to run an event and draw people in and put some money up, I think is really important. I do sometimes wonder whether or not Star Wars will be both a benefit and a potential barrier, right? So it's obviously a benefit because it's a massive intellectual property that we all love. But if you are a mom and pop, local game store and you're like, hey, I want to run my own 10K or whatever, I don't know what the legality is going to be as far as like how you can market that. Right? Because you won't have permission to like use the Star Wars name or whatever. Now, I'm sure that a lot of these stores can probably just do it and get away with it anyway, because, until somebody tells them to stop, they're I doubt Disney is like prowling around local game stores waiting to slap people on the wrist. I just don't buy that. But I do wonder, if you were somebody who is like, I wanted to run an event, at PAX or something, whether or not something of that size would draw the ire of the legal team, if you will. So I don't know. But that is something I've thought about, right? Because I think about, you know, people like The Realm and MinMax who do such great work for Flesh and Blood, and they run events that, you know, are now sanctioned, and they'll do battle hardens and whatever. But there was a time when they were just putting their own money up and doing their own thing. And that was also, I think, really helpful for the game. And I don't know what that's going to look like when you have to deal with the mouse.
Lastly, let's talk about collecting and collectors. And this is an aspect that I think is, I have no horse in the race on this one.
And
but
I'm broke.
Well, I think part, sure, that definitely is part of it. Let's be real. But this is a conversation that usually bubbles up whenever there's issues about reprints or the price of cards or this or that and rarity, etc. Collectability of a card game is, you know, whether you like it or not, or you care or not, is a reality. And there are collectors out there who want to know, is this something that I want to invest in? And for those who think that who cares, collectability is a major part of this, because I'll be frank, I don't think that Lorcana would have been anywhere near as outrageously popular if it weren't for the casual Disney collectors who are just buying the cards to open and put them in binders and not play, the non-playing groups. Collectors may be playing the game as well, but for the record, it's Star Wars. Therefore, it is ultimately collectible. So where is the appeal for collectors? And to me, the first thing that pops up, obviously, is the fact that there is a multitude of different variants of cards at different drop rates, be it the standard card, obviously, the foil version, the hyperspace treatment of it, the foil hyperspace treatment of it, and then there is the crazy, what are they called? I forgot what the name is of them, but like these alternate art leader cards that are one in... Showcase. Bingo. Showcase variants of leaders, which are 1 in 12 boxes. That is unreal. That is 10 times as rare as a legendary in Flesh and Blood. Like, unreal. Absolutely unreal.
I'm not joking when I say, oh, I'm broke, but it's both because I actually am, but also because I'm definitely going to be, after I chase down my Showcase Sabine and my Showcase Jin and all of my favorite characters in hyperspace, and yeah, my wallet's already angry.
It's probably just crying a little bit. It knows what's coming, you know? It's the sadness of it. But for the collectors out there, there is a lot of opportunity to bling out your deck, opportunity to, you know, find those rarest versions of cards that extend beyond just foil versions. They extend to hyperspace, like extended art versions, and then the foil versions of that. These chase card showcase cards as well. But the beautiful part about this is that there's also a lot of joy in opening the pack, because I've seen it in all kinds of pack opening videos. You rip the pack, you toss the token from the back aside, you rip through 90% of the pack to get to the uncommons and the rares, and then you just throw everything away. In this case, the hyperspace variant of a card can be any card. So there's actual joy and a little mystique when you're opening a pack and rifling through the cards, because you never know when that hit is going to be. You never know where that hyperspace card is hiding. Is it a common? Is it an uncommon? Is it in there at all? Like, that's the fun of this, Charmer, is that collectors who just want to fill binders and collect Star Wars cards are going to have a fun time opening packs and looking and say, okay, it's not here, it's not here, it's not here, it's not here. You kind of get that suspense built up. Is it the rare? Is it the uncommon? Who knows what it is? And bang, there it is.
As somebody who plans on, you know, making some YouTube content for this, especially after the game launches, there is a part of me that hopes that they have just kept it very close, but there's a part of me that hopes that it'll be some astronomical number, but for every, I don't know, 1,000 boxes or whatever, there will be one like hyper pack. and it'll be every card is hyperspace.
You
because
mean yeah.
You know what I mean?
A God pack.
Just that, like, you open it and the first one is hyperspace, and then you pull it and you see the second one is too, and then your hands start shaking and you get that moment, right? Like, there is a part of me that hopes that they snuck some of those in, because that's just I don't know. It's all of the good chemicals, man. That's the dopamine, the serotonin, the endorphins, you name it, all in one go.
Yeah, I don't know how many games out there have done these God packs where every card is like a majestic or a mythic or like one of the rarest drops possible. All like 10 or 15 cards are the highest rarity card. Like, those exist. And Raw Deal, the WWE game, had God packs. And I think my buddy opened one once long ago, and it was just a surreal thing to think, because this was like pre-internet. It was just like, he's like, what the hell? And it's like, oh my God, that's unreal. It's crazy.
That's what I love about the hyperspace variant thing, just in general, because you can do a quote unquote God pack. That's why I called it the hyper pack, because it doesn't even have to be like every card's a rare, because I don't think that you would want to do that to compromise your limited experience, but you can still make every card hyperspace and just have it be the same distribution of, commons, uncommons, and rares or whatever, right? Like, that's fine, because the hyperspace takes the slot. So there's no harm, no foul if you just want to do the hyper pack and just every card is the hyperspace variant. I really hope that they have snuck that in.
Well, there was remember the error one from Flesh and Blood, where basically they weren't God packs, they were God boxes, where for those who are unaware of this, Flesh and Blood was it Dynasty? Or Outsiders? Yes. No, it was Outsiders. Outsiders was a set that dropped, I think, almost exactly a year ago. And ultimately, here's what happened, friends. Somebody posted on like the fan page on Facebook saying, I opened a box that had something like 17 legendaries in it. And people are like, haha, whatever. And he's like, no, like, I have witnesses. I didn't record it, but I people were there. Here's all the pulls from this one box, and people are like, haha, whatever. And then LSS, Legend Story Studios, who makes Flesh and Blood, comes out with a statement saying, here's the deal. There was a collation issue error for exactly 20 minutes, where the collation should have been commons, it was feeding legendaries. So however that works, they put legendary sheets of cards in the common collation thing. So they said ultimately this affects something like 0.2% of boxes that exist, but 0.2% of boxes are absolutely juiced to the tits. Like, I don't know how else to I know that's vulgar, but it's just, I don't know how else to properly, basically what they said is 2.2% of boxes are the cat's ass. Like, absolutely the cat's ass. So people are now like, okay, is it the Japanese print or is it the Belgian print? Oh, it's the Belgian print. People are now sitting on potential gold mines because we have only heard of something like 2 or 3 of these boxes being opened, when in reality there should be something like, I don't know, like 50 to 100 of these boxes in existence or something like that. But they're all stored away, and people are like, am I sitting on a God box? Like, it's nuts. But that is in error, whereas what you're describing is purposeful.
Yeah, it would be purposeful. But I do think that it would be a lot of fun. And obviously, when you think about the error, like I said, part of the issue with the error is that it could potentially ruin the limited experience, right? The last thing you want is to sit down for your, draft portion of a world championship, and then one pod gets the God box and everybody's got legendaries. My working theory for that is that that's one of the reasons they moved all of the legendaries to like the expansion /token slot in future sets, I also, we talk about the expanded black bar in Flesh and Blood. That was because of manufacturing stuff. I know they said it was for languages, but I also think it was in part because of that, to help with the collation stuff. But ultimately, because hyperspace exists on every rarity and you can still maintain all of your competitive integrity and all of that, I just want them to do hyper packs.
Do it. Do it. You won't. You won't, cowards. You'll do it. Maybe they have. Maybe they did. That's the beauty of it. We don't know. All right. So there you go. One last thing, actually, if we're talking about the collectability of it. I forgot to mention that there are other variations of cards in terms of bling that are judge promos, event promos, store championship branded cards, and extended art. So again, if your goal is to have a master set of everything, it is going to be exceptionally challenging. And sometimes collectors are up for that. They've got the deep pockets, and they just want to make sure that they have every single card that has ever been printed. Good luck, because it's going to be difficult to get those top 8s, those top 4s, those finalists, those championship every month, every promo, everything that happens. There's a lot of variants of cards, and as such, there are going to be people who want to get the best or all of which. So collectability of the card game, I think, is great. And yeah, so hopefully some of this has appealed to you as a casual gamer, as a competitive gamer, or as a collector. And if it hasn't, that's totally okay too. We just want to be transparent and clear as to some of the reasons why you should get into the game. And if we didn't sell you on it, no worries. We're still friends. Fair?
I think that's fair.
I think so too.
However,
yeah,
if somebody comes up to you and they say, "Hey, I heard you're friends with Charmer," and he's got a message for you.
Uh-oh.
What would you say to that?
That Charmer has a message for me?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I use the Charmer rule, which is disregard the first thing you say. That's the Charmer rule.
Fair.
The Charmer rule, by the way, was utilized in Hartford. I didn't even bring it up. Somebody said, "I'm going to use the Charmer rule." Like somebody had a poop-eating grin on their face and approached, I think it was Logan or somebody else, and said, "Hey, Logan, I got it," or Logan asked somebody a question and they had a stupid grin on their face, and Logan's like, "I'm using the Charmer rule," and they're like, "What's that?" And I had to explain. I said, the Charmer rule is basically disregard the first response given by Charmer when asked the serious question, and then you repose the question, and that's when you get the goods.
It's even more so in group chats, I will say, though it does happen quite a bit in person. If you don't know me personally, one of the things that I try to live by is that life is way too serious to take life seriously. So even in very serious moments, I am known for interjecting non-serious answers. Yes. Now, I will still buckle down and give you sage advice when needed. Or at least I like to think so.
But you just have to endure.
But the first answer is going to be something that makes me smile for me.
Basically, you'll say something, and my first response is like, "We're closing the blast doors," and then I'll say, "I'll see you in hell," and I leave. That's good. But no, what I would say is, I have a bad feeling about this.
I got a bad feeling about this.
I have a bad feeling about this.
I've got a bad feeling about it.
Quiet.
All right, so bad feeling mailbag. We've got some amazing submissions this week, and we'll try to get through them as much as possible. I'm going to kick it off here, Charmer. We have an email from Stephen Scheel. I'm going to skip some of the nice things that were said here. Basically, Stephen mentions that he was not necessarily too interested in the game until he found our podcast and the hype that we kind of, just started pumping for it. And now he also cannot contain his excitement because he's fully ingrained in the community and the culture and is excited about the game. And he also mentioned that he's just played a lot of Magic growing up and really was outside of the card game scene. So this was a nice reintroduction to TCGs, and he wanted to give us thanks for that. But it's not us giving. You shouldn't give thanks to us. the community itself is such that you should, we all in this together, and that's important. But here's what Steven Scheel asks as a question. Basically says, wants to give our thoughts about the viability of mono red aggro decks in the first set. Back when I played Magic, I was a notorious RDW player. That means red deck wins, so mono red. And I'm looking to recreate that deck for Star Wars Unlimited. I've played a ton of Force Table, but I know that's not the same as playing against real people. What are your guys' thoughts on how I could best make that deck in Star Wars Unlimited? And for a Magic player, how is Star Wars U different from Magic in terms of that playstyle? So Magic and red deck wins, which is basically RDW is code for a mono red. You're only playing red, which is a lot. It's low on lands. It's like 18 lands. It's a lot of low to the ground, hasteful creatures and spells that do damage. The objective is, if you're seeing turn 5, you're probably losing, so you're going to win before that. Lots of direct damage, lightning bolts and lightning strikes and hasteful creatures, and just doing a crap load of directed damage to burn your opponent down in an aggressive feature. Steven wants to know, Charmer, what is the equivalent of mono red?
So the answer to that, in my honest opinion, is going to be Sabine. So heroism and then double aggression, and specifically with an emphasis on like rebels and troopers as well. We just got Saw Gerrera spoiled. I think he fits right into that archetype. You want to go with Sabine just because the hero as well, like the reason you go with Sabine over the villainy one is the hero as well is a source of direct damage. Right now it's to each base, but it doesn't matter. The idea is that you're going to be doing damage faster than what your opponent does. And so you're fine with that. You will hurt yourself in order to hurt your enemy, hurt your opponent. When you're looking at kind of the cards that you want to include, specifically, if it's not heroism units, it's just like the generic aggression ones. It's going to be stuff like Benthic 2 Tubes. With heroism, Spec Force Soldier, I know we've talked about on this podcast before. Jedha Agitator actually looks pretty solid. Wolf is also up there. And then as far as like the other forms of direct damage, there's cards like For a Cause I Believe In. That's that one that's got Cassian's art, and you reveal X number of cards. I think it's 4 from the top of your deck, and you deal damage based on the number of heroism ones that you reveal, and then do other things as well. So that's like the core. I think that there's stuff that you can move around, but I really feel like I think double aggression is definitely viable, but I think heroism and specifically Sabine is the way to go, because of For a Cause I Believe In, because of running both the leader Sabine and the unit Sabine. K2SO is another great unit in that deck. If you're not familiar, he's like a 4-cost 4/4 Overwhelm. And then when he's defeated, you can either deal direct damage or I think it's make them discard a card, right? So either way, you're impacting them one way or the other. Just all sorts of stuff. And like I said earlier, a lot of the cards will just inadvertently have the rebel tag. So you can get away with running cards like General Dodonna or even Fleet Lieutenant. Fleet Lieutenant's that 3/3 for 3 that when you play it, you can have another rebel attack right away, but it gets +2/+0. So that's a very good like low to the ground. It's almost like an event with a body left over where you get that extra damage in, but you also play another unit. It's there. I don't know what the exact ratios will be, but it's there. I truly believe that a version of that deck will be very good in set 1.
I asked, I think when it comes to mono, I think mono in Star Wars U will be dual, in my opinion. I think that there's going to be no true mono decks. You can't have it. Exactly. It just doesn't exist. So the mono moniker would be dual, and in which case you're right, dual aggression, and with Sabine I think is the right way to go. And yeah, I think that's fair. And also, P.S. Ice Cave Radio Discord server when? Now, Steven. Now. I did it this afternoon after reading your email. I was like, fine, I'll do it. You win. All right, what's the next one?
All right, so this is from Dan Sotelo. Hi, guys. I've watched every episode on YouTube. I'm sorry. I mean, listen, Flake is fantastic, but there were some where there was no Flake and you had to deal with me, so I'm sorry. Keep up the great work. I have a question that, if I remember correctly, you briefly touched on in an episode, but I want to revisit as we're only a few weeks from release. Man, that feels so good to say out loud. Only a few weeks from release.
It's great. Remember when we had no clue, like when all we had was 2024?
Yeah. So he goes on to say, to my knowledge, FFG has not officially mentioned anything about prizes for the bigger events, mainly Galactic Championship. And this is something that we actually touched on a little bit earlier, but with the landscape of card games these days, out of the big money cash prizes, would you be shocked or disappointed if they don't offer money prizes? And they mentioned this specifically because FFG has shown reluctance to do those things in the past. And what are your thoughts on the growth of the game if they don't? And as for a quick answer question, what is each of your favorite non-leader cards that you've seen thus far? So,
all right. So
we already kind of touched on the money thing.
Yeah.
I'm just choosing to not believe that the money is real so that I can hopefully just be surprised.
Look,
but I like all signs point to there will be something. I would, for all the reasons Flake said earlier, I would say they are clearly supporting this game more than they have supported any other endeavor like this in the past. And not even like, oh, it's like, you know, a little bit of extra resources. I mean, the resources they're throwing into this game are miles above. So I would legitimately be shocked.
I will say this. I would very much be shocked if there's no price tag or there's no monetary winnings associated to major tournaments. I would be shocked if the money is for a Galactic Championship is not a six figures number as well. So if that's going to be the case for the first one, maybe not.
That's why I was like, I don't know about the first one.
First one might be like a 50K, and
that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, but I mean, for 2025, to me, it's $1 million price tag, and that's for all the stuff around the world, and they're going to parse that out and make it happen. Look, like we mentioned earlier, this is a game that they're fully invested in many ways, shapes, or forms. Whether you trust them or not is that's your decision to make. I have no previous relationship with FFG or their games, but I am also cautious. But I am cautious and optimistic. I understand that for a game to have a player base, it needs to entice players who want to invest their time towards something. Because not every person is playing cards for the sake of playing cards. A lot of them want to earn something. There's something tangible that you can win, and that appeals to people. That their time and their effort is being rewarded in a certain case. And for some, it's winning. You know, I got a top 4 at my store championship. I got this cool Mace Windu branded as a top 4, and that's the end of the line. That is where they want to end. I have seen and played with players like that. I'm kind of like that. I've also played with players like Darick Patel and, you know, Michael Hamilton, or here in Canada, like Darick Patel and Aaron Shantz and Sean Dollywall and Isaac Karut and Nia Tran and all these other massive, massive card gamers who, when they go to a tournament, it's because they want to win it, because they want to qualify, because they want their time to be rewarded. And I think that in the grand scheme of things, FFG needs to realize that if they're going to compete against Flesh and Blood, against Magic, against Pokemon, against Lorcana, that they have to put a reason for them to play it that goes beyond the love of the game. Because when it comes to the love of the game, it's not that they love Star Wars Unlimited. They love playing cards and strategy card games. So if they're going to invest 20 to 30 hours a week into honing their craft, they want a reward at the end of it. So to them, it's like, whether I play this or this, it doesn't matter. But I'm going to play the one that has the carrot at the end of the stick, the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow that I could potentially win. And I've seen it. You've seen it. Battle Spirit Saga had a lot of pro players from other games go to the Pro Tour, learn the game, buy the cards, and then never touch it again because there are no more money tournaments. So it's a reality. FFG needs to understand that if they're going to compete, they need a reason for people to play their game outside of the fact that, you know, they like Luke Skywalker. Fair?
Is that your choice for your favorite non-leader card?
My favorite non-leader card is... Ooh. I can't tell you, man. Oh, no, you know what it is? It's the Star Destroyer that cancels the first event that your opponent plays. I think that might be my favorite one.
Relentless?
I believe it's Relentless, yeah. That is for sure probably my favorite card right now.
That's a solid
Or
choice.
there's the one that you drop it on the battlefield, and it's a ground unit that you name a card and your opponent can't play that card. That is
Regional Governor.
Regional Governor. It's one of those two. Either way is denial. It's a denial card.
Yeah. So, I mean, cheesy answer for me is Sabine, because favorite character, and I'm sure you could say the same for Han. But if we're just talking about like favorite card, I think the unit version of Darth Vader is perhaps one of the most impactful and flavorful cards they've revealed. I'm not necessarily what I would consider like to be a Darth Vader fan. I don't dislike Darth Vader or anything.
He doesn't care
if
you're
like
a fan or not.
Right. Like, I'm not a diehard Darth Vader fan, but I'm saying this because, like, I want to pick that, and I just don't want people to think it's like, oh, well, of course, it's Darth Vader. No, like, that card is just legitimately good and hits all the flavor notes and does all the things. I also just really like Vigilance. It's between those two for me. Like, Vigilance is the reason I keep going back to trying to do a double Vigilance control deck.
We're going to have so much fun, dude.
I know.
All right. Hopefully that answers your question. Did you notice the email address for Dan Sotelo?
The
Stormtrooper 81.
Well, yeah. I mean, I wasn't gonna say the whole thing because I don't.
Well, I'm not gonna say the whole thing, but
yeah. Stormtrooper
81.
Stormtrooper 81. So if that's your birth year, then he's in good company with us 80s children.
80s are the best because you got to live the 90s with some cognitive reality going on.
Yeah.
All right. Last one. This is from Kenton Matos. Hey, Team Wampa. We'll take that. I am enjoying your podcast. From day one, your podcast production has been fantastic. Well, thank you so much. I'm not in any way Steven Spielberg, but I've been a one-man show for many other projects, so I do what I can. I love your banter. You guys seem to flow together in conversation. Well, we're buddies. That's how it goes. You should see us not on a podcast. You should see us on a cruise ship. The one thing I am missing is someone with more knowledge about FFG, particularly Star Wars Destiny, as it could add a bit more to your conversation, as there is a ton of Star Wars Destiny influence in the design, as some of that design team is part of the original designers for Star Wars Unlimited. Even without that, your podcast is one of my favorite gaming-related casts I listen to. Well, thank you so much. And I did reply to Kenton privately, and I'm going to say it publicly here. I agree. This is a shortcoming of mine personally, that I have never played Destiny. I've never played an FFG game. I've played so many other card games, and you're absolutely right. It's something that I don't know how I can rectify, because I don't think, I'm not going to go and play Star Wars Destiny and learn the ins and outs of it. But
I was going to say, if the next time you come visit me, if you want, I can hit up some locals that still have all their stuff.
Perfect. I would love to learn it.
We could make a night of it or whatever, just so that you can have the context. You know what I mean?
And that's a good segue here, because the remainder of this email, first of all, I just want to say that yes, you're absolutely correct, and it is something that I hope that some can forgive or see past. That I personally, I can't speak for Charmer, I can't speak for Doa, but I personally am lacking in that, and I will do my best nonetheless. But here, he provides context to the question. Here's the context. He says, in Star Wars Destiny, some characters had such traits and others did not. Chewbacca had the Wookiee trait, and Jabba the Hutt did not have the Hutt trait. In later sets, they did have some Wookiee synergy going on, which was fine since they included the trait on Chewbacca, making the early characters usable. In another FFG, Marvel Champions, they just released Spider-Man and Spider-Woman earlier in development. Neither of these characters had the trait being Web Warriors. Then later on, they decided to release products of characters with Web Warrior traits and synergies with that trait, while excluding Spider-Man and Spider-Woman. The question is, Do you think Star Wars Unlimited should have included species tags like Wookiee, Hutt, Chiss, Nogri as traits? Did they limit the options for the tribal pairings and mechanics for the future? Does the set rotation play into not being a big deal? Since an older release character will not be playable, can they replace it with a newer version? This is a very intriguing question, Kenton, and I appreciate you asking it. What are your impressions on this, Charmer?
My initial impressions, if I'm being honest, are that I don't personally think that it will be too big of an issue for a couple of reasons. First, I'm struggling to think of any of the actual racial tags that have been used. I don't think we have seen them. It's always been like either faction like Imperial or Rebel, or descriptors like, you know, Trooper, Official. There's Jedi, right? But there's also Force. But as far as I remember, I don't think we've seen a Wookiee, a Chiss, or any of those things, a Rodian.
Well, okay, so here we have Droid. That I think is passable.
Oh, you know what?
There's
no,
Hutt.
I'm wrong. There is Hutt. Okay.
Hutt is there. But what I found is
you could make the argument that could be part of like the Hutt clan.
Syndicate, yes.
Like Syndicate, yeah.
I agree. I think that's what they're alluding to. Now, when you rewind 25 some odd years to Star Wars, they had Alien as a descriptor of a character that played into game effects. I think what they're trying to do is kind of get away from race-related descriptors.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was leading into. There is also Jawa, but you could say that that's like the Jawa tribe, because like I don't even think we know technically what a Jawa is. But what I was getting ready to say is that one, I think it's mostly been faction oriented thus far, and I think that is where they plan on taking it. But if they do decide to correct course, because in this game we've already set a precedent for there's going to be different versions of the characters from different eras and different whatever, I think it's fine, because if they do print something where they want it to have a specific synergy, then they will likely just include a new version in that set. And then that'll be good for the game for two reasons. One, because then you'll have more versions of very popular characters, but also, again, because they have put such thought and care into the limited experience, you want, theoretically, your sets where you have a specific synergy in mind to be part of your sealed and part of your draft experience. You don't want to never have backwards compatibility and interaction with your design, but you still want some core critical mass of it to be in a set, because that's going to be the identity of it when you draft and when you play sealed and whatever. So I think that they'll just print new versions, and I'm okay with that.
Part of it is also sometimes if you're like thinking, okay, like if we have to start doing this, and because we want to build a tribal around it, what they'll probably do is print a version of Chewbacca. Let's say if you're talking about Wookiees, if Wookiee becomes a tribe, a descriptor that has synergistic elements to it, and they're like, well, our Spark of Rebellion expansion Chewbacca is not really a Wookiee because it's not printed on it. How do we get around that? Well, maybe they print a new Chewbacca that just plays so well within the Wookiee tribal deck that it's almost stupid to play the other one. It's just a better statted option. It's much like, you know, in Star Wars CCG, they printed Chewbacca of Kashyyyk. They already had the other Chewbacca, but the other Chewbacca was always getting force choked by Vader. It was this like 6-power dude, but his ability was so small, or he was getting shot to crap because he had no defense value. Then they gave him a roar. It's like he can roar and his defense value becomes 4 instead of 2, which keeps him a little bit, you know, more on the board. Plus he was a scout, and he was, you know, the reason he was printed was to work with scouts, so they made him better on Endor. Nobody played the Chewbacca that came with A New Hope. They just kept printing better versions. And that also alludes to power creep in as well. And that is an element of power creep in itself, is more tribal abilities to it. And this game is not going to be immune to power creep. You know, however many sets they're already down the road, they're probably looking at like, look, this is our third Wedge Antilles. Wedge Antilles version 3 It's much better than Wedge Antilles version 1's, all things considered. Whether it's an extra point of stats or one less aspect needed to pay it, that's just the way it goes. I agree with you that it might be a concern to a degree, Kenton, but I also kind of am not necessarily too worried about it, because should there be rotation, should there be other things, I think that it's just another balance metric that they're going to keep in mind.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. I was trying to think of a situation that I might still predict or could see happening if we weren't considering like the alien races. So for me, it would be, you know, what's it going to look like when we start getting, you know, a bunch of first order units, right? Are those all also going to be Imperials, or will we just have first order and trooper, but maybe not Imperials, that sort of thing? Who knows?
Yeah, that's true. Very true. All right, my friends. I'm just sorry. I got a message basically saying our pre-release tickets are now available. So I just got to snap that off because Star Wars U pre-release. I'm super excited. Yeah. All right, friends. So that is it for the Bad Feeling Mailbag. If you'd like to submit a question, you can do so by emailing icecaveradio@gmail.com. You could tweet at WatchFlake. You could tweet at ThatCharm3R. You could tweet at GGDOA for our other partner who's out braving the wilds of life. Or you can tweet at Ice Cave Radio. We invite you to please follow us there. Join our new Discord. The link will be in the comment section of this video, or rather in the description of this video, and join us. Join us also on Saturday if you're listening to this on Friday at the FFG stream. I will be there. Charmer will be there. Doa will be there. A myriad of beautiful, wonderful human beings will be there playing this game. So please join us. It's going to be awesome, man.
Saturday, February 10th.
Yes. Good call.
I don't know when you're watching this, person in the future. So Saturday, February 10th.
2024.
Watch us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you.
2024. Because if you're watching this in, 2047, then hey, I'm happy the game is still going.
Yeah, and thank you for feeding me.
Sending my wife flowers at my funeral. There's no way I'm making it to 2047. Dude,
that's not far away. That's 23 years from now, dude.
Have you seen me and how I live my life?
It is my mission to keep you healthy and smiling. Friends, thank you very much again for checking us out. Be sure to give us a 5-star review. It gives us the best chance of cutting through the algorithmic jungle. All right, Charmer, are you ready? Are you locked? Are you loaded? It is time for your parting wisdom. Friends, thank you very much for listening to Ice Cave Radio. We'll see you soon. Adios, Charmer. Wisdom, go.
May the Force be with you.